F-150. 20-inch wheels. It's 289 Cobra. Big block aluminum, polished aluminum body. Shelby 1. Got a blower on this one.
Darren, feel that clutch.
Pardon me, pardon me.
Feel that clutch.
With the brushed aluminum stripes. Cool. Shelby 1's got an Olds in it. Cool. Another vendor, Dynatech Racing. Weber engine source. Manifold with a Weber's. Neat. Spraying Crest. His displays from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Crest shirts. He's got a hell of a collection of Mustangs, GT40s. Come down to sign them.
There you go. Thank you, sir.
What's your name? We have a photographer. Same thing? Yeah, I'd like some. Please. I'm going to take Mike. Some of the style. Very good. Right field in here.
You know, see, now you got to have to sign the back of the t-shirt.
Oh, nice.
A couple old vintage Mustangs, and that's a new 05. Beautiful. Pretty neat. There's a new Ford Cobra. 500 horse V10. Pretty neat. Excuse me.
In-house. Yes. Yeah. Built by California design.
It's so cool watching that on the Discovery Channel.
That was.
Yeah, that really was.
Yeah, they brought it here from California for the auto show. Put all the final touches on the show.
I like that place.
Probably done a laser.
Made Detroit deal with it. What is the wheelbase? Yeah, okay. We're going to go put the wheelbase.
What is that? It's a...
Are they going to go?
Yeah, we do.
Carol got his name on it.
Hey, don't let anybody touch my car. Okay, we'll tell them.
There's old Shell just coming in.
Don't mind putting our head down.
There's Cal, Shelby, and Kopech rapping.
SAAC conventions around just about any spot in the country that has a first-class racetrack and a large enough number of our members to make it successful. But the two places we especially like are Southern California, because that's where the Cobra and Shelby Mustang were born, and around Detroit, Michigan, because that's the home of the Ford Motor Company. I have to say that it's very nice to have Carroll Shelby associated with Ford once again.
Here, here.
Before we get to this evening's program and guest speakers, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce SAAC's Board of Directors. Each one assumes a major responsibility at each convention, and they are the ones who make things happen seamlessly. We also have a standing committee of about 50 people that do all the work that it takes to get done. I wish I could name each one here, but we don't have time, and I know that I forget somebody, and then they'd come after me tomorrow with torches and pitchforks.
Notice those two cars zipping around the track. We like to call those Thunder and Lightning today. In fact, so many people came by that we thought it would be a good idea to give a very brief overview of the cars and answer a lot of those kinds of questions. Now, since I'm not the charismatic speaker that is reversing Mr. Kopech car, I brought along some slides so I can hold your attention, hopefully, for just a couple of minutes. Staying under the ultimate pony car at Ford's request. Only a few thousand were built, some by Shelby American in California, and some by A.O. Smith in Michigan under Shelby's direction. The cars, as you all know, used a combination of Shelby-developed and aftermarket parts. They won races, pink slips, and most of all, they won our hearts. But I'm sure all of you wish there were just a few more around that we could all drive. Well, in 2002, a project was begun to rekindle the flame that had been smoldering for so many years. Doug Hasty and Carroll Shelby began to talk about building continuation Shelbys based on vintage Ford Mustangs. The strong public demand for these Shelbys led to the birth of a new project that was announced later the fall of that year at SEMA. They also decided to offer those Shelbys Dykeman, who is here. Mike, can you stand and wave your hand just a little bit? Who's representing the cars? They wanted to give everybody an opportunity through a Shelby dealer to check out these cars. Now, instead of cranking out vintage cars with old tech, Shelby and Unique Performance elected to wrap that good-looking 60s body underneath the latest speed technology. The result was a car that most of you know simply as Eleanor. Now, the GT500E is singular appearance to a Shelby clone that appeared in the hit movie Gone in 60 Seconds. To build these continuation Shelbys, 67s and 68s are rescued for transformation. Modern technology updates the performance and the comfort of these Shelbys. Each GT500E comes with a hot Ford V8, performance brakes, suspension updates, full bar, 17-inch wheels, side exhaust, air conditioning, and a whole lot of other items. Electronic fuel injection is also now available. And when a few people said that's just not enough power for me, we introduced a 750 horsepower aluminum supercharged Shelby engine. Now, if 750 horsepower doesn't make your heart race, I'd suggest you check your pulse because you must not have one. Now, in the 60s, Shelby put together a team that took standard Ford Mustangs and applied the best performance technology. These continuation Shelbys do the very same thing. The cars are assembled much like A.O. Smith did every GT500 and GT350 from 68 to 70. Working together, Carroll Shelby, Brent Fenimore, Doug Hasty, Bobby Mikas, Richard Kirby, Chris Lane, and many, many others ensure that every one of these cars is genuine Shelby and pure muscle cars. Now, the companies involved in this project are considered the premium speed merchants in the industry. From Bear Brakes to Quaker State, these guys know how to make cars go faster. And because the cars are genuine Shelbys, each will get its own Shelby VIN number and is fully documented. SAAC is going to list them in their own separate section of the next registry. And we're pleased to announce tonight that everybody who purchases one of these cars will automatically become a SAAC member courtesy of Unique Performance. That all begins this weekend to help try to grow the flock in sense. Now, the media has certainly jumped on this program, drawing even more attention to the Shelby name. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen stories in top outlets like Dream Car Garage, Mustang Monthly, Mustangs and Fast Forwards, and Auto Week. And I'm sure most of you saw Mr. Shelby and his current Cobra concept program in rides. Well, he's going to be a star again, as Unique Performance and Shelby will be seen in a segment that's going to air July 27th on Rides. It's going to feature the manufacturer of a new GT500E. And you are the first to know as of tonight that we have formalized an agreement with the world-famous Orange County Choppers. These two crazy guys are going to build a GT500E Eleanor bike. The Tunnels were so impressed that they're getting two Shelbys themselves, and they're going to put the cars and the motorcycles on their television show. So once again, Shelby's going to be seen in the limelights. Now, in another bit of news, the Shelby name returned to pro racing and to the winner's circle when Mike Ashley took a 67 GT500E Pro Mod to victory in only its second race this year at Houston, Texas. Now, speaking of racing, the most requested car that we've had for the second in the continuation series has been the GT350R, which was created purely to win races. I'm sure all of you know the story, that it did. And now there were only 37 of these fantastic cars built. They've become very, very rare and worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's why last fall, we introduced that second car, the GT350SR. We created an even faster, better handling, and more comfortable Shelby for the 21st century based on that original R model concept. Now, while the GT500E featured unique custom bodywork, the GT350SR looks just like that original 350R. Now, it's called the SR because it's designed to perform on both the street and the track. Yes, it's fast on the track, and it's also got air conditioning so you can be cool while you look cool. Like the GT500E, it's got all the latest speed technology, and only 500 of these cars will be made available. Because the cars are going to be in such short availability, we elected to begin offering a line of performance products for people who want to add just a little bit of Shelby magic to their 65 to 68 Mustang. You can see Mr. Dykeman and check out a few of these items at the rig over the weekends. Now, all of these cars and parts come from a little slice of Shelby heaven, a 30,000 square foot factory in North Texas. The location is the center of many exciting events and projects. You never know who's going to just drop in, from celebrities to pro athletes customers just to see the factory. Now, about 6,000 people and almost 300 cars came to see Mr. Shelby and George Barris at our grand opening last October. Thousands more came to greet Chip Foose and the Great American Pony Drive this April. And we'd like to invite you to come to the party this year. We hope the event, which benefits the foundation, will be even bigger and better. We've got lots of great surprises planned for this year. It's apparent by the enthusiasm here at SAAC 29 that people still hunger for Shelby cars. And as you can tell from the weekend, Mr. Shelby is still cranking out great ideas and great projects. So whether your tastes run from Cobras to Shelbys based on Mustangs, it's great that Mr. Shelby is still building phenomenal cars that stir the blood with high performance and great looks. These two American muscle cars are adding to the Shelby legend. We hope you'll come to the rig and check them out this weekend. Thank you.
Well, these two cars have meant quite a lot to me. I've always been a Ford nut. I grew up in a Ford family, and believe me, in 1962 when Carol introduced the Cobra, I was in heaven. There was a sports car with a Ford engine. I bet this was the greatest thing since sliced bread. In 1964, I was in my last year of high school, next to last year, and I sent a letter to Gene Bourdonnais, who was the head of Ford Styling at the time, and asked him what schools he might recommend for a young man who'd like to go into styling at Ford Motor Company. He sent a letter back to me, a very nice letter, and he had pictures in it, press pictures of a car he called the Bourdonnais Cobra. I was in love again. Here's a Cobra with a new stylish body, and it was really sleek and really looked sharp. So I saved that picture all these years, and then the Cougar 2 was a car that was done before the Bourdonnais Cobra. You can see the semblance in the body styles of the two cars. And over the years, everybody thought the cars got crushed. They were Ford styling prototypes. It's typical many times they build a lot of these cars. A lot of times they aren't drivable. Nobody wants to take care of them or store them or maintain them, so they just crush them or stuff them away in a corner somewhere. A couple of years ago, somebody asked, what happened to those cars? I said, well, that's a pretty interesting idea. Maybe I should dig into it a little bit. When I retired from the company, I had a little more time to do that. So I started tracing people at Ford, called people at the Design Center. Remember these cars? Well, yeah, I think so. We gave those to a museum in Chicago. We gave them to the Henry Ford Museum, back and forth. So many, many phone calls later, and about 4 or 5 years of searching and through dead-end leads, I found them right here in my own backyard at the Detroit Historical Museum. So I contacted the folks down there, and I went down to see the cars, and I said, we've got a mystery to solve. We don't even really know which Cobras these are, and we really would like to know that for historical purposes. So I maintained a relationship with the museum, and I got to thinking, gee, the convention's in Detroit next year. Wouldn't it be neat if I could get these cars together and bring them to the convention? So I proposed that idea to the Historical Museum, and they said, well, you know, they've got to be insured, you've got to transport them. I said, we'll take care of it. So I leaned on a few of my friends. Tony Branda supplied me a steering wheel and a couple of Cobra badges to fix up the Bourdonnais Cobra where the parts had been taken off of it. Some of the louvers in the hood had been smashed out, and somebody got frustrated with a broken hood latch and tried to get inside through the top to open it up. And then Ken Eber helped me work with some of our very good suppliers. Parish Insurance, who insures my Cobra replica, provided the insurance so that these cars could be here with us this weekend. And our friends at Intercity Lines transported the cars in a hauler out here. So you folks should remember the things that those people donate to us. I have solved, since the article was written for the newsletter, the mystery of the serial number on the Cougar 2. It's CSX 2008. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing the cars here and get lots of pictures of them, because I don't know when they'll be out again.
Thank you. It's just going to take a moment to switch this over. I came to give a slide presentation last year about driving cross country, and I guess you guys didn't hate it too much because you invited me to do it again. So you don't remember it. Well, I happen to have it on my computer. I can go off of that again if you'd like. Just bring this up here. There we go. I grew up on Long Island, and as Jeff said, he was in a Ford family. I grew up in a Volkswagen family. And my exposure to racing was licensed speedways and Cub Scout. But I had always heard about all the movie Featherweight, Fireball Roberts. And so when I got a job offer at Charlotte Motor Speedway back in the early 80s, I was lived down there for 3 months while my wife was up in New York selling the house, and that gave me a lot of time to cruise around. So I cruised around Charlotte, bigger and bigger circles, and one day I came across this big brick building on the backside of the airport, and it was a big gas tank. And I said, oh, and everybody said, oh my God, that's it. That's it. So I pulled in there, and I'm looking around it, and it was a junkyard. It was just awful. It was scrap metal, it was used tires, it was old pinball machines. They had rented out sections of this building, literally for salvage storage. I said, God, this building could talk. What could it tell me about when we walked in that door, the cars that were built in that place? So I decided, I was a PR director at the Speedway, I'm going to write a book about this. So this was 19 years ago. I did a media tour. Every year, Charlotte Motor Speedway does a media tour. They invite journalists in from around the United States. So I put together a media tour and brought together a bunch of legends. This is the first time this had been done. This is 1985. I'm the guy with my eyes closed in the middle, and the guy with the white sweater is Fred Lorenzen, and the guy with the darker jacket is Ralph Moody. That was the first time they had seen each other for 20 years. So I've grown together for that thing, and I don't know if my arrow will work. Yeah, well, that guy. Anybody know who that guy is? And Smoke, right. This guy over here is Ned Jarrett, and this is Wendell Scott Jr. He's there with his father. So we had, there was all sorts of people on a panel. It was a wonderful evening, and that was really the start of the book. I've got audio tapes from people that are not around anymore. So I started to write the book at that time about these two guys. Ralph Moody on your left, and John Holman on the right. I never met John Holman. He died in 1975 in December. He was driving a truck. He was testing a piece of equipment that he had developed for trucking. Had a heart attack. And Ralph Moody died 3 weeks ago. An amazing man who had bad cancer all over his body, but he fought. He was a racer. And a wonderful, wonderful man that helped me and opened up everything he had, books and photographs, to make this possible. So what I just want to do is tell you for a few minutes about putting this book together. Old ramshackle race cars. This was before NASCAR was formalized. It was a bunch of bull rings and people just ran old stock cars. And many times the promoters would leave before the money was stock racing had a bad name. Well, car companies wanted to get involved in stock car racing, but they couldn't invest in this type of activity. So Bill France came along at the right time, started NASCAR, and it became more formalized. Ford Motor Company financed a team that had a base of operations in both Long Beach, and this is in Charlotte. It was Pete Apollo Racing. And Pete Apollo Racing, Pete had won the Indianapolis 500, was quite a good businessman and manager as well. This was a shop off Wilkinson Boulevard. It's still there today. And so Pete ran Ford Motor Company's racing program out of there until 1957, when the AMA, the Automobile Manufacturers Association, decided that racing promoted unsafe driving, and so that therefore all the manufacturers were going to voluntarily end all racing activities and not do any advertising as far as performance or speed, any of that stuff. So reluctantly, all the manufacturers signed that. Here's a picture. This was taken at Bowman Gray Stadium, and it's got Ralph Moody in car number 12 racing against Carl Kiekhaefer, Hemi Chrysler with Tim Flock as a driver. At that time, Ralph Moody was just a race driver, and he drove for Pete's Apollo Racing team, but he was also a brilliant engineer. This picture always stops my heart, because I mean, if you imagine a dusty old bull ring. This was Asheville Weaverville Speedway out in North Carolina. This is the pace lap, and if you look how clean those cars are, it's amazing. Look at the color on the 1957 photograph. It's amazing how clear that was taken by Don Hunter, who supplied many of the photos in the book. This was before the AMA ban, and so manufacturers were still involved. These Fords here, the two Fords in the front, they probably had superchargers on them. For several of the races in 1957, superchargers were allowed. And if you look further back, there's a Black Widow 1957 Chevy and Mercury's, cars like that. But then the ball dropped. Halfway through 1957, no more racing. Ford Motor Company had a team on the West Coast, a team on the East Coast, and they had to get a racing. So they called two people that they had known, Ralph Moody was a development driver and engineer, and John Holman was a truck driver who was best known for being able to drive very fast during the Pan America races, keeping up with the Lincoln team, and delivering parts at checkpoints. And he was on time, he was meticulous with his record keeping. They said, guys, if you come up with 12 grand, you can own our racing operation. So they begged, borrowed, and stole. Ralph Moody had an airplane at the time, he popped it, got 12 grand, and suddenly they had a racing operation. They moved all Pete DiPaolo's racing equipment from California to Charlotte, and they were in that building that I showed you earlier. What do? Ford's out of racing. These guys had spent every nickel they had to buy something. Now what do you do with it? They race Studebakers. I asked Ralph Moody about this, and I said, what the heck is this going on? He said, well, you know, no manufacturer was giving any money. He said, Studebaker slid us a little money over the table. If we can make a bridge like a bark one, just imagine what we could do with a real car. So they built a team of Studebakers, and they ran Sebring and Line Rock. In fact, John Holman drove one race in his life. He was jealous that Ralph Moody was getting all the credit for being a great driver. So John Holman drove this car in a Line Rock race, got to the end of the first turn, forgot to put on the brakes, flipped the car over, and that was just the end of his racing career, one turn into it. They presented him with a trophy with an upside-down car on the top. But I saw the spec sheets on these cars. These were little hot rods. I mean, they went through the suspensions, the valve train. They had three-speed transmission. I'm sorry, limited slip. They were pretty hot cars for 1958-59. When Ford Motor Company got back involved in racing, Holman Moody moved out of the little brick building I showed you and onto Charlotte Airport. They had 7 buildings that were formerly barracks at the airport. This was one of them. They had 7 of them altogether. And Ford Motor Company said, these guys are so loyal to our brand, except for the Studebakers. They were so loyal to our brand during the bad times, they're our guys. So in 1962, money started to come back into Holman Moody. So this is what it looked like. You can see there's a McCullough Supercharger sign on there. And they were mostly Fords, but they do other cars as well. I think they built a 221 cubic inch Volvo 1800. Weird little things like that. And they started to win. Here's the golden boy, Fred Lorenzen, and that's his crew chief, Jack Sullivan, next to him, a brilliant engineer. And if you look at Miss Teenage America, she's probably saying, what did I get myself into? This is a Darlington, and you can see the Darlington stripe, what it took to win that race, is split the car, right quarter panel of the car on the fourth turn on the wall there, because the track was egg-shaped. That's what it took to win. And if you keep the car in control, you might win the race. Some of the other drivers that ran through the Holman Moody shop, Dan Gurney, actually won his first stock car race at Riverside. He won 5 stock races. His first one was won in a Holman Moody car. The remaining 4 he won in Woodcock's cars. And Parnell Jones mostly drove Bill Straub cars. And for a while, there was a company called Holman Moody Straub, which was a West Coast operation. Jim Pascal was a great driver from the Southeast, and there's Ralph Moody. He had just won, I think, the Southern 500. Junior Johnson, who drove a couple of races for Holman Moody, but basically every single Ford stock car that anybody raced came out of the Holman Moody shop. They built them, they supplied the motors, the parts, they repaired them. So other teams, such as Junior Johnson, ran Holman Moody cars. The most famous one he drove was the Banana car, which I think was the beginning of the world of Templeton. No car ever existed that looked like that car. It was a Ford Galaxy that kind of looked like a Taurus or something back in 1966. Curtis Turner, I'm sure he's promising Richard Petty, I'll let you pass me on the last lap, I promise. Curtis was a guy that could drink for 3 days straight, not sleep, go in a race car, pull over, win the race, and just go right back on the party. Unbelievable guy. Fireball Roberts, brilliant driver from Daytona Beach, Florida, lost his life in 1964 in a fiery crash at Charlotte in the World 600. If anybody here has ever met Ned Jarrett, he does a good job of hiding it. He's got a finger that's been almost a 45-degree angle on the top digit. That happened when he saw this explosion. It was his friend, Fireball Roberts. He stopped the car, ran over, and pulled Fireball's burning body out of the car and broke his finger very sideways thing. Car would wind up passing away several weeks later. Very terrible burns. Mario Andretti, he drove some GT40 races, never did very well. He did well until either transmission or an accident or some other reason he DNF'd. But he actually won the Daytona 500 in 1967. He was a dirt track racer. He was used to short races, wasn't used to fuel stops. And Ralph Moody told me he just had that car sideways all day long, ran out of gas 4 times, posted in, they filled it up. He didn't know how to look at the pit signals. You know, when you drive short track cars, you don't look at the pit signals and stuff. So they didn't have a radio. So when he ran out of gas 4 times in one race, it was amazing. And Jarrett didn't drive directly for Holden Moody, but drove for the Bondi Long team out of Camden, South Carolina, and Bondi got all his cars from Holden Moody. Mark Donahue, again talking to Jack Sullivan, Mark drove, I think he drove a couple of stock car races, never won in them, but he did drive GT40s in 1966. Cale Yarbrough started off as a carpenter and floor sweeper for Holden Moody. It's amazing how you know, like, you didn't have the system for achieving greatness for Holden Moody. You didn't have to have an engineering degree or anything like that. You had to be a floor sweeper. And then when you did a good job there, you became a carpenter. And what did you do, carpenter? Well, they needed to build crates to build engines, ship engines around the world. So he was a crate builder. And they said, yeah, you're doing a pretty good job there. You want to drive Daytona? And that's how he got a job. Pretty amazing. So that's interesting. Jimmy Clark, talking to his friend Jacob Rinke. Jimmy Clark drove in 1966 in Rockingham, the home of Fairlane. In 1966, Ford was boycotting NASCAR. NASCAR allowed the Hemi to be entered by Chrysler, so Ford said, oh, okay, so we're going to end this thing over in 427. Well, NASCAR said no. And they said, okay, well, we're going to boycott. Well, they wound up boycotting almost all year, but they did put their factory drivers from other series in races, and actually Jimmy Clark drove Rockingham in 66, and he fell out with some kind of mechanical problem. Pretty interesting that he happened to drive a stock car. Sweet Savage moved his family, his wife, and young children, and no money, and lived in a trailer in Charlotte. And again, he was a floor sweeper, a carpenter, but they knew he had potential to drive them. And yeah, so that's where he got his driving start before he went on to come in during his pro show, becoming what looked to be kind of a brilliant Indy career before he lost his life in the career. And Wendell Scott. Wendell never drove for Holden Moody, but he was the recipient of many parts. And Ralph told me a great story. Ford Motor Company was very aware on Monday morning of the stats, and it said, you know, Ford won, Ford came in second, Ford came in fifth, and there was always this guy who finished like fifth, whatever it was. Who's this guy at Ford finishing so bad? Well, he's Wendell, he's got bad engines, and he uses old pistons and stuff. So, he said, well, Ford Motor Company said, well, give this guy some parts, get him so we want to finish last. So, Ralph would regularly get on the phone and say, oh, Wendell, this is Ralph, bring a truck, bring a trailer, and all the money you can bring. Come on down tomorrow, and we're going to load you up. So he'd come down, ramshackle old truck. They'd load on Fred Lorenzen's year-old Galaxy. Brilliant, you know, great race car, engines, gearboxes, rear ends, tires, wheels, gauges, ready. Load it up. Okay, how much money you got? Wendell would reach in his pocket and take out $60. He gave him all those cars for $60 time and time again. They really had a soft spot in the heart for Wendell. I've got audio tape of this man. He was, what an interesting man. They weren't all stock car racing. Look at this. Now, what's wrong with this picture? A GTO Ferrari chasing a Falcon. Wow. You know, we're doing new Ford GTs, we're doing new Cobras. I think the new Falcon would be the way to go. Just a suggestion. Before the Mustang came out, Ford needed a smaller, high-performance car. And so, Moody said, well, let's build one. So they built 3 Falcons simultaneously, really quick. This was Challenger 1. It had a 221 cubic inch engine with a 4-barrel. And, you know, it had the big stock car wheels and axles and brakes, moving brakes in the front, that kind of thing. And this is it racing at the Sebring. Giacomo and Marvin Panch drove this car. Also, they drove in Freeport. Challenger 2 was sectioned 4 inches, which means, really odd, the steering wheel was 4 inches close to your legs. So they had this problem, the gauges were down near your ankles now. So they had to raise the gauges up, and it was a really weird car. And then they built Challenger 3, which is right here. And this was sectioned 4 inches and chopped 4 inches. And Luigi Lazowski, who was a fabricator for many Indy cars, made this out of a couple of pieces of aluminum. And this car exists. Actually, the one I showed you before and this one are being restored right now in Gastonia, North Carolina by a guy named Kim Haynes. They are cool. So, out of another picture, like this stranger than truth, look at this. Here's a Falcon running against the Ferraris and Cobra. This is National Speed Weeks. And actually, you know, the car did okay. Martin said that they just beat it so terribly, the curbs knocked the suspension out, and ultimately the tires were wearing, so they parked the car. But, I mean, right around that, it was 1962, right around that time, you know, Ford said, you know, we appreciate what you're doing, but you're wasting your time. These cars have no marketability. They got into drag racing, and actually built some of the first funny cars. And John Wanderer, who now is an attorney in Las Vegas, was the program manager for Coleman Moody for drag racing, GT40s, the Hunger, and he said every week, every Monday, the guys would bring their cars back, Phil Bonner and all those guys, move the rear wheels forward 2 inches, move next week, move the front wheels forward 2 inches, move the rear wheel 2 more inches, and you wind up having these altered cars that like started to look really weird. They developed the first stockless body. This body weighed 40 pounds, and that is John Wanderer over there. This is Phil Bonner's car. This was a standard wheelbase car. How's that for a picture? All single overhead cam 427s. When, I'm sure most of these have a home today, but you know, when they had the auctions there, they were selling stuff off. They had 429 heads, cases, pallets loaded with 429 heads that were sold for aluminum scrap, pennies on unbelievable. All camera motors here. I don't know if this down guy has got a jacket on here, but this photo was taken at Young Ford in Charlotte in 1966. And I assume it was part of the High Performance Tour. You see there's a GT350 in the showroom, one on the curb. And I don't know which coupe that is. It may be number 1. I'm not sure. Carol, do you know which one that is? No. Well, we're pretty sure it's either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Now, in that car, the Cobra was aerodynamically limited to, I think, 145. And this car, you know, raised that another 20 miles per hour. But it took the GT40s to really get some speed and be able to compete against the Ferraris. So here's Mario Andretti and Lucien Bianchi's Mark II in 1966 at Le Mans. And this is the best finishing Coleman Moody car at Le Mans ever. It was driven by Ronnie Buckman and Dick Hutcherson. It finished 3rd. First and second were won by some other team. I'm not quite sure who that is. This is an interesting picture. It's in the pits of Le Mans. And if you look over at the guy in the red sweater, it's Glenn Wood. And Ford Motor Company did this a couple times. They did it in Indy when Jimmy Clark ran the Indianapolis 500. They did it at Le Mans. They brought the Wood brothers, famous pit crew, over to Le Mans to pit these cars during the race. And so Lee Holman has a funny story. He was kind of like the logistics guy. He was just a young guy, probably 19 years old, 1966. And he picked the Wood brothers up and helped them get their baggage to the Charlotte airport so they could fly up. I think they flew to Washington and then on to Paris. Oh, the suitcases were so heavy. Oh, it must be jacks and wrenches and stuff. So they put on the plane, they ship them over there in Paris. So they're riding from Paris to Le Mans. He's in the taxi with Glenn Wood, Leonard Wood, a couple of the Wood brothers. The team guy said, "What is in those suitcases?" I know what it is. He said, "It's food." What do you mean it's food? Well, we know we like French food, so we bought a bunch of cans of Vienna sausage and potted meats. They brought 10 days worth of food for our whole team. You know that French food, nobody likes that stuff. After the GT40 program is over, we got into Can-Am cars for a short while. At the second half of 1967, this is the infamous Honker, which was sponsored by Paul Newman. He didn't own a SAAC thought they could do with this thing, if they could beat the McLarens and all the big block cars, they'll run a small block in there, and they'd be able to run a lighter weight car and beat everybody. Well, they got their ass whooped, never did any good. It handled so bad. In fact, here's Paul Newman sitting in the car. This is where, this turned his button on the racing, by the way. This is Bridgehampton in 1967. And the car handled so bad that Mario said every time we went past a flag station on the road course, flags would run, spin out. And he said, I'll tell you what, Paul, I'll put my name in front of the car, you drive the freaking thing. This was the Holman Moody building. If you look at the block part in the middle, that was opened in 1965, it was 50,000 square feet. They had to move in there before it was finished. The concrete floors weren't quite finished. But the other building, a couple of their other buildings in the airport burned down and were wooden. So they built that as the main facility. The part on the left was the fabrication shop. Those were tin buildings. That's where the fabrication was done, roll cages, painting, that kind of stuff. And ultimately, they built another section to the right, which was the engine. They had 4-engine dynos and all their flow benches and that kind of stuff. And then in the grassy area to the left, there was a huge hangar there, and that's where they would store their old race cars. So you could go there and buy year-old race cars that were hanging on racks. And I'll take one of those, and one of those, and one of those. And actually, the honker was stored for several years on the roof of the concrete building. And people forgot about it. One day, somebody landed and said, there's a race car up there. Actually, that car exists now. A guy named Tom Midler owns it in South Bend, Indiana. Inside, does that look like a race shop? You know, it looks like a factory, and that's what it was. When most NASCAR teams in their day had 3 employees and ran a back of a radiator shop, they had 3 to 50 employees. And pretty amazing. Right in the center there is a forklift, and that was one of John Holman's passions, forklifts. He'd buy them, all clapped out, and it didn't matter what deadline there was for Ford or anybody else. We've got to ship cars along. I want you to fix these forklifts. So to get guys, fabricators building forklifts, just so you can move parts around on Sunday afternoons. Inside, they had one of the best machine shops in the southeast United States for its day in the mid-60s. They did have some basic computer punch card type machinery. Here's an early flow bench test they were doing on an intake system. I had to eat crow today because I identified this in my book as being a big block Ford, when in fact back in the test, that's a Chevy. Oh God! I guess it's a big block Chevy. That's Ralph Moody and Waddell Wilson. Waddell went on to be brilliant crew chief for Yarborough and other people. He's still very much involved in the sport. This guy is Robert Yates. He went on to great things as well, winning NASCAR teams, winning the championship. Robert was a young guy, son of a minister in Charlotte. And I don't know how it works. Robert said they made so much money working for Holman Moody, but we could never spend it because we worked from before sunrise and after sunset. We worked the weekend. The banks weren't open when we were around. So weeks and weeks and weeks and months of checks were stacking up on dressers. And guys were buying houses cash. He said, you can work for a diesel company and make $1.85 an hour, but you work for Holman Moody and make $5 an hour. But you couldn't spend it, which was, I guess, a good thing. But he would work there ungodly hours. And then he'd get in the car and drive up to Junior Johnson's. Nobody knew about this. And build engines for Junior Johnson all night and then drive back to Charlotte before the interstate came. I mean, so that was, I don't know how we slept. I've heard the 2 different engine building styles between that guy, Waddell Wilson, and this guy. They'd be building motors and they'd have cubes next to each other. And Waddell would be quiet and he had his torque wrench and just take away on rod bolts and just being so exact. And Robert Yates would be building the same engine next door with an air gun. 2 different styles, and I guess they were both open. They were successful. Holman Moody won 92 races NASCAR races as a race team, and then hundreds of races as the supplier of Ford cars to NASCAR teams, the Wood Brothers, whatever. They never won a championship. They never ran a full season until this guy came along. Ford Motor Company said to Ralph Moody, "Can you guys win a championship?" And Ralph said, "Hell yes, we can." He said, "Let's do it." Well, 1968-69, David Pearson ran the full season, won 2 championships. He had just left Cotton Owens, drove for them. Brilliant driver. He drove the Torinos. This was the 69 car, it was a Talladega Torino. If you look, the nose in the front is length about 7 inches over the stock Torino to compete compete against the Superbirds and the Daytonas. Ford Motor Company went away, the money went away in 1969 after Henry Ford II said, okay, that's it, we've done everything we can do in racing, we only go down from here, turn off the money tap. Holden Moody plodded along for 1970. In 71, Bobby Allison came along, won 9 races for them, and the only reason they could afford the runs is because Coca-Cola supplied some money. There was not a lot of money around those days for sponsors. Think the Jeff Gordon of the 60s was Fred Lorenzi, and beside his car said Lafayette Ford. That was $6,000 a year to supply major sponsorship on the hottest car. $6,000 a year. Jeff Gordon wouldn't sign 10 autographs for $6,000. So it just tells you. So I don't know how much Coke supplied, but it was enough to keep the team going. Ford pulled out, Coca-Cola went away, Ralph Moody left. He sold his share of the business to a Japanese holding company. And he left to open Ralph Moody Automotive. He worked with Janet Guthrie, Benny Parsons. Benny Parsons won the championship. His cars were prepared by Ralph Moody. And then he ultimately went on to produce, I guess, work on vehicles, alternative vehicles, the Perkins diesel, 3-cylinder diesel, turbo, Capri that got 3,000 miles per gallon. There was a lot of clouding stuff around it, and he never would tell me the truth about it, so I'm not sure there was any. The last car that Holden Moody fielded was this car. It was 1972, and it was wintertime, it was snow on the ground. This was all that was left of Holden Moody. They were really going broke. And they were fielding it as Riverside. They were going to win the race at Riverside with Bobby Unser. The car fell out with tank failure, and that was the end of it. That was the end of Holden Moody being a race team. From that point, they could only build cars for other people. A couple of people in this photo right here. This guy, that's Kenny Thompson. Some of the people in this room probably know Kenny Thompson. He was a Holden Moody craftsman back then. This guy, Freddie McCall. He went to work for Ford Motor Company for a little while after he left Holden Moody, converting GT40s, Mark IIs and Mark IVs to air conditioning and stuff for street use. And then he opened his own welding shop. And Dan Ford still is involved with transmissions and gears and motorsport today. This is way, way back. This is Pete DiPaolo, was one of the first people to get into the go-kart race. This is back in mid-50s. And this dapper guy right here, his striped shirt, that's Lee Holman. Lee Holman took over the business after his father died. His father died in 75. The bank took over. They started to sell cylinder heads for pennies, scrap, He took over and he runs to this day. These guys had not seen each other, well, for a long time, for 20 years. I talked Ralph into coming with me to the old shop for a photo. And Lee, the son of John, and he pretended they were enjoying the being together. They didn't. But this is a continuation GT40 Mark IIs that we built right now in the shop. And here's a whole lineup. Now these guys, Jimmy Tucker and Larry Wallace and Junior Martin, these guys have worked here their whole lives. These guys have worked here since the mid-60s, and they're still there. There's still 4 or 5 people who work there. Larry Wallace still grinds cams the way he did all those years. They're so loyal. By the way, the building that I showed you earlier was torn down 3 months ago. This is what Holden's doing these days. This is it. It's a continuation GT40 Mark II, and he's building 16 of them right now. And they just moved into a new building. It's clean. The bathrooms haven't flushed in 20 years in the old place. It's got bathrooms that flush. It's clean and neat. It's got a little assembly line. It's a neat place to be. It was a great thing to be involved with. I didn't want to end the book because my publisher got to finish it. Finish it. So I had to finish it because there was just too much more to go. But some people bought some today. I hope you enjoyed them. I've got to over here if anybody wants to see me afterwards. In conclusion, Carol, I know you and John Holden never were the best of friends. I never met John Holden. He died before I was able to meet him. But Ralph Moody was a gentleman who said great things about him. He passed away three weeks ago. Yeah. So, kind of end fences and stuff. Now, what I want to do is I want to present you one of this special edition, numbered, signed Holden Moody books, and please take it and read it. all the good wood, he's getting all his money used up. But if you find any mistakes in there, keep it to yourself. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken, and no, I didn't come here to talk about myself. In fact, I came here to talk about legends and the legend. And many of you know about legends like the Cobra. Most of you probably know more about the Cobra than I do. When Carol was off building this car, it was the thing. It was the car to beat the Corvettes. That's what it did. I loved it. I was a kid racing slot cars and building AMT models. And, you know, that car was my hero car. And the man behind the car, of course, you all know and love, is Shelby. And perhaps I know Carol better than most of you, but probably not all of you. I'm sure some of you know Carol from before. Now, when my wife saw that picture, Cleo, I have to apologize. She said, "He's hot." So, Cleo and Carol and I get together. I first met Carol in the late 80s. We can't remember when. I do remember the time and place, and that's when my boss at the time was a Frenchman by the name of Francois Castang, and he says, you know, we'd like to build, wants to build a sports car. You're working on that V10 engine. Why don't you come down to the conference room? Why don't you meet Carol Shelby? Show them the stuff you got. And so I brought down the drawings of the Iron V10 8 liters that we were working on and said, I can make one for you out of aluminum. And Carol kind of looked at me in this kind of kind way. And, you know, he did his kind of poor boy routine. He says, I don't know too much, but I really think I want a V8. But as it went on, it became clear that Bob Lutz wanted a V10. And we began working together. And of course, the Viper came out of that. It was a great project to be working on. And so we've maintained our friendship ever since. And we've had a great time. Now, an interesting thing happened, and actually, after I went to Ford back in 1999, we were trying to rekindle the relationship between Carol and Ford. Finally, last August at Pebble Beach, I had the good fortune of announcing with Carol that, in fact, we were extending our collaboration to many more projects. And it all started with, in fact, Carol being the senior advisor on the Ford GT program. Now, when we made that announcement, some people were wondering in the press, does anybody really know Carol Shelby anymore? And so one bright young marketing group went out and said, you know, wanted to see how well recognized the Shelby name was. And sad to say, Cleo, but he beat out Pamela Anderson as the #1 recognized name in the country. And this is last August. So what we didn't tell people at the time is we were going to be working on some stuff together. And in fact, we were collaborating on a project I think that you all know called Daisy. Of course, you see Carol with Daisy there. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Now, I said our first collaboration with Ford was, in fact, working with Carol on the Ford GT. He was a senior advisor on the program. We had Carol come out, meet with the team. This was my dream come true. Ford GT was a very emotional thing for me. When the Americans beat the Italians at Le Mans, that's, you know, it's American superheroes. And this is what, when you were a kid and you're racing a slot car and you're pretending you're a race car driver, and you think someday that's going to happen. To have the opportunity to actually do a vehicle like the Ford GT is a dream come true. And we got the okay to do it. But Bill Ford gave us one proviso. We had 12 months to get cars 1, 2, and 3 done for the Centennial from what was a concept car. And there we were, actually 2 days ahead of the Centennial. You can see Carol Shelby, of course we had Jackie Stewart, Dan Gurney, another legend, John Coletti, and our chairman, Nick Sheila there as we drove the first Ford GT. Actually, this is car number 2 up and onto the stage. And it was quite an event. Now, I don't know how, all of you are car nuts, obviously. Most people don't really understand car nuts, but I'll tell you, deep down in all of us, we respond to automobiles in a special way. And people have responded to the Ford GT in a way that I respond. You remember it as a kid, you yearned after it, you lusted after it, you said there could be nothing like that, there could be nothing like a Cobra, there could be nothing like a GT350 or GT500. But how many of you know who this guy is? Raise your hand. Oh, I know you know. That's cheating. That's Jeremy Clarkson. He's the meanest, nastiest, orneriest writer in the United Kingdom, but he has a fantastic show called Top Gear. Now, if I can get to this guy, because he'll crucify you if he doesn't like a car. If you can get to Jeremy Clarkson, you've done your job. Now, I'm going to apologize in advance. There's 8 minutes of video here. The quality is not the best sound quality. So, and he's got an English accent, so pay attention. But I think you'll enjoy. Well, maybe it's an American accent that I have. I think you'll enjoy this. And Jeremy runs this show, Top Gear, is the second highest rated show in the United Kingdom on the BBC. He used this segment to open his show. So, without further ado, we'll let it roll.
This is the new Ford GT. It's the first proper supercar ever made in America. It was built to celebrate Ford's 100th birthday. But there's a lot more to it than that. Ford tried to buy Ferrari, but at the last minute Enzo pulled out of the deal. Henry Ford was livid and ordered his British division to build a car that would crush those eye-tight, toe-rag, scumbag, pony-ass heaps of junk. This is the car that resulted. Called the GT40, it beat the Ferraris and Le Mans for 4 years on the trot. It transformed the way we thought about Ford, and it left a lasting impression on a small 6-year-old Ford's pickup trucks. Makes me feel 6 years old all over again. In fact, I think I just wet myself. The GT does look like a Lotus. It does shop like a Lambo. It goes harder and faster than a Ferrari. I don't think what's the best thing about it. It's priced like a Ford. It's going to be less than £100,000. That's 8,000 less than the Ferrari and 17,000 less than the Lamborghini Gallardo. I love this thing. I love it even more than I thought I was going to. All that power. Because it takes you back to a time when Detroit was humming to the petrol-head rhythm of the Motown sound. A time when the Temptations provided the desk hands and the factories were on bass. A time when the streets echoed to the sound of dancing and the roar of last chance heroes in their V8 muscle cars racing between the lights.
Well, I think we got him. I said, talk about Carroll a little bit, the legend. Everybody claims Carroll's brilliant. He claims he comes up with new ideas, wakes up 2-3 times in the evening and jots down new ideas. Let's go back through the history of Carroll's ideas. He took a bankrupt ACA's, put big motor in a little car, created a legend. He took a lowly Sunbeam Tiger, put a big V8 in a little car, created a poor man's legend. He put a big motor in a GT, called it a GT 500, created some of the great cars you have. And at Le Mans, they did not win until Carroll was hired to run the racing team, and yes, Holman Moody was also heavily involved. But the idea was, put a big honking engine in a little car, called 427, and began history by winning 4 times in a row. Le Mans would have been done without Carroll and the team, and he told the team the stories, and he inspired the team in our doing this car. And that was just the beginning. And the more we got to talk, the more the friendships got rekindled, the more Ford got back into the home, we started talking about doing some more projects together. One of them, of course, was Project Daisy. And this is a difficult project because many of you are Cobra owners. How do you do a new Cobra? You can't go retro, you can't recreate the old legend. Carroll's still building them. You still love them. So this was a real challenge. How do we do a modern version? How do we imagine how the Cobra would have progressed 40 years later, developing this concept car? This is probably the most fun I ever had in my career, was working with Carroll. We started on this car literally from sketch in March of last year. And by December, I think it was December 19th, Carroll and I were out at Irwindale Raceway and had a ball driving the show car before the show. I think it's the first time it's ever been done. Normally show cars aren't engineered and drivable like this car was. I won't go into sound, I apologize. We lost the sound on this, I'm sure. How many of you have seen the ride show on the Learning Channel? Just raise your hand. So I think you've all seen it at least once or twice. I'm not going to take you through it. We lost the sound on this, but I did want to show, this did chronicle, in truth, they were the flies on the wall as we built this car together. And we were trying to recreate a legend. And you see the inspiration. You know the inspiration. We had Jay Mays out there. The car was designed in Valencia, California by a guy by the name of Richard Huddy. And it was the first time I know a show car had a fully engineered chassis with a 605 horsepower V10. It had these, well, we could admit it now, it had these sticky cigar cutter throttle bodies, which have now been replaced on the show car out there with proper throttle bodies. And we had a ball building this car. Now I came out here to do a little market research, because either you like what we've done or we've offended you. So I'd like to know how many of you in the audience would like us to build the Shelby Cobra concept. Just raise your hands. Okay, and I need something from you. I need each one of you to send a letter or an email to Bill Ford.
What's his email address?
I think if you send it to William Ford III at William Clay Ford Jr. at Ford.com, it'll get there. How many honestly don't like the vehicle? It's okay to hear that. I've got one. Two, one so-so. And in fact, we're still trying to tune the thing up. As I mentioned earlier, some have said this is too futuristic, some said it's too cold, and trying not to create the old Roadster. In fact, what we tried to do is go very modern. And now we're trying to add a little more sex into the body style. But we need the rest of you to write those letters to Bill. For those of you who don't like it, you can send your letters to me. It's ctheodo1 at Ford.com. Now, obviously, we're not just talking about Ford GTs and Cobras. There's more to come. You've all seen the Mustang out at the racetrack today. It'll take a whole lot of imagination to say that will be more versions of it in the future, and Carol and I have been talking.
Dear GT 350.
Never thought of that. We're also doing some Lightning products. So performance is really in our hearts. We are committed, and the people under me are committed to creating some new legendary performance cars. It's no secret that there was a bit of a drought. Pretty hard to race some of the cars that we had, or even have high-performance versions. There's more to come in the future. We're so glad to have Carol back. I'm so glad to be here with all of you, people who really do appreciate cars, great cars, and are committed to Ford Motor Company as well. So thank you for your time and attention, and I think we have to hear from the man pretty soon, so I better get off stage.
Rick, you always make it hard for me because you bring out so many things that I've forgotten about as my life has gone on. I don't know what the hell's going to happen next. I wake up 2 or 3 times a night, wake Cleo up, and say, what do you think about this and what do you think about that? And I'm the first to admit I've had a hell of a lot more failures than successes, but I know you won't believe this, a failure's been kind of fun too. Yesterday, day before yesterday, I guess, Chris took me to a tour on the Ford GT. And I've got to tell you, we kept the wheels on the ground on the old
AC chassis because it had 700 foot-pounds of flex, and it bent so much that we just put wider tires on it, and we beat Ferrari for the World Championship. I can't believe how crude you can get to be successful. When I look at what they're doing there to build that car, it's absolutely amazing. They take every 45th chassis and they grind into the wells, analyze them, and find out what's wrong with them, if anything, which I'll bet you that they haven't found a bad one yet. And then they go back on those other 44 chassis and correct any failures. Now there's a test going to come out in Motor Trend with Enzo Ferrari and the new Porsche, what do they call it, Porsche GT? Or something. And the Ford GT. They're about even in performance, I think. That's the way it looks anyway. But I'll bet you, when I see what Chris has put together here, this organization that is building this car, I'll bet every nickel that I've got, you can take the Enzo, you can take the Porsche, with the Germanic superiority, whatever you want to call it, and run it and start out 100,000 miles. I'll bet every dime I've got from the Ford GT will kick the shit out of them. Smart enough to do that. I'm not smart enough to put anything like that together. And I know it. I'm an old hot rodder that just loves cars. But when you see the young people like Chris that have come along and what we have today in the industry that everybody laughed at, that the bean counters still laugh at, why in the hell do we spend money on performance in these companies? And then when you see what these, I call them young engineers, real car people that have put together, we're in for a hell of a future as far as automobiles are concerned. I couldn't believe all the technical things that are now involved. I can't, every day I'm amazed all the crap that you have to put up with by the government regulations, and these people take that and absorb it, figure out how to work it, and we've got something that I'm so proud of. I remember one time in the Ford GT program, we kind of screwed up. We were having problems. Going to Le Mans 64, we had problems with Ford GT. I'd like to go into the story sometime of how the GT came along. I'm not ever going to do a book because you'd fill this room with all the stories. We blew up in 64, 65. Ford built the engines. We thought we were going to do very well. And they had run 3 or 4 Le Mans on the engines, and suddenly somebody says, well, we're going to rebuild the engines one more time. And they bought some head bolts that were soft, and all the engines blew up, and Henry the Deuce and Edsel and his new wife were over there, and they turned around to the old man and said, Jesus Christ, is this what we came over here for? And September of that year of 1965, Mr. Ford had Leo Beebe and Don Fry and I in his office, and he was pretty jovial when we walked in. He said, yes, Mr. Ford. Don Fry says, Mr. Ford was sure sorry for what happened at Le Mans. He said, oh, don't worry about that. He pulled out 3 name tags with our names on them and said Ford wins Le Mans in '66. This is September '65. Talk about immediate dysentery. Anyway, there'll never be another program like that, probably. But the fact that we accomplished that, and it wasn't me, it was a lot of guys. It was so many great, great people pulling together without the company politics interfering. Nobody ever questioned. There was no problems anywhere. Probably spent hundreds of millions of dollars. Or nobody ever knew how much it cost, but there'll never be another Henry Ford. But what we've got now is people like Chris. I can count the real automobile people that we know of on my fingers and toes. But there's thousands of them out there that are now coming along in this industry. It's now a $25, $30 billion a year industry. It's getting bigger all the time. And things are going to happen that we don't dream of. And at 81 years old, I'm sitting back. I still like to build cars. I still like to fiddle with them. But what these guys are going to be able to put together, I want to sit back and enjoy. And I really look forward to this. After I went through all the things that you have to do now with all these damn government regulations, and I still see these things happening, I'm enthusiastic about how we get there. A little automobile company like ours can't operate without a relationship with a big company. And the only place that I'm comfortable is at Ford. I know a lot of people. I know a lot of assholes there. I know a lot of wonderful people. But that's where I'm going to be till they run me off, and I'm too old to run off now. I don't go in and try to tell them what to do. I don't go in and try to fight the politics anymore. I want to sit and ride on the coattails of people like Chris. I want to tell you that I've worked with all 3 companies. I've appreciated a lot of things, and I'm thankful for a lot of things that happened for all of them. The cars that we built at Ford, the cars we built at Chrysler, the cars that we tried to build at General Motors, Series 1, a hell of a good car. I want us all to be brothers in this thing and appreciate what's happened. I remember Chrysler. I went to Chrysler and Lee Iacocca says, hey, I need you to help me. I says, okay. I went and asked the guy, what have we got to work with? He said, well, we got a 2.2 liter engine with a transmission with one little groove in it and cable shift. I said, oh, shit. We all worked together, we wound up with the back. Turn the history of Chrysler around as far as performance is concerned. We talk about I hated John Holman. I didn't hate John Holman. The Ford philosophy is if you're going to try to do something, you take 2 jerks and put them together and let them see who's the last man standing. And John Holman knew he was going to get run off if he failed, and I knew I was going to get run off if I failed. So there was no personal animosity there. I have nothing but fond memories of all that now, but it's this son of a bitch at the Anyway, here I am a kid. We all went on too long. I love you all. I'm lucky to be here at 81 years old with a heart transplant, a kidney transplant. And Cleo and I want to thank you for putting up with us again. And Doug, we're going to put something together. You've got a good thing going there. Las Vegas. We're gonna get there, don't worry about it. Thank you.
An amazing thing about a guy like Shelby, and there aren't too many of them around that are real icons and living legends. Reminds me of the story about Pancho Villa down in Mexico, running around terrorizing people, and he was making the Mexican peasants pay an extortion fee so he would leave them alone. And there was this one old farmer that refused to pay him. So Pancho's men picked him up, brought him to meet Pancho Villa, who was sitting on his horse in the crossroads eating a chicken leg. They put the guy in front of him, and Pancho Villa says, "You don't pay me." He said, "I'm going to kill you." And the guy says, "Please, don't kill me. I'll do anything." And Pancho says, "All right." He says, "There's a horse turd on the road. If you eat that, I won't kill you." The guy bent down, picked it up, and started eating it, and Pancho didn't kill him. And about 2 weeks later, he was hanging around with his friends in the town square, and the name Pancho Villa came up, and this guy says, "Oh, I know Pancho well. We had lunch together the last week at the crossroads." I know that I've met a lot of people in this club that spend 5 minutes with Shelby, and the next year when I talk to them, they're telling me what a great friend he is and how they have these long conversations and everything. I think that's a mark of greatness on his part to be able to do that. And I wanted to, before I forget, to acknowledge two people that we have here tonight that are part of the original Shelby team, is Bernie Kretschmer and Tweety Aldrich. Would you guys stand up? We attract our share of these guys. It's like kind of like reliving the past and coming home all in one fell swoop. And I know that next year we're planning another one of these super reunions, and we'll probably have about 75 to 100 people who used to work at Shelby there. And we're also going to have another one of those auctions. All the stuff that they hoarded from their Shelby days, all the team jackets, and all the parts that disappeared from the parts room are probably going to show up at this auction. I have one more thing that Mike Shaw, who was good friends with Bill Neal down in Texas, and they recreated the Terlingua racing team, and Mike asked me if he could come up and just make a presentation to Carol. So Mike, would you come up here?
Well, first I got to tell you, greetings from everyone in Texas, but I have to admit, I'm not a native Texan myself. I've only been there about 15 years, but I'm a Southern boy, and I thought I knew Southern things pretty well. When I got down there in Texas, I learned a few things about the language. It was different. For instance, the word mayonnaise. It has a whole different meaning down in Texas. You know, it's not that white stuff you find in the grocery store. Down there, it's mayonnaise. A lot of people in here. And I also found out, they taught me in school, that the longest word in the English language, and they said, look it up in the dictionary, anti-disestablishmentarianism. Well, I found out in Texas there is one word that is longer. That word is shit. Anyway, and Bill was wanting to be here, but he had some family obligations that kept him away, so I'm here in his stead this week. But back in the 60s, as you probably, a lot of you know, that Carol owned a small ranch down in the Chisos Mountains of southwest Texas, about 250,000 acres, something like that, pretty small. And he used to take a lot of friends, car buddies, just folks who lived there in the valley or wherever, and go down for a little R&R. They'd ride dirt bikes and have a few tall tales around the campfire in the evening, and maybe a few tall drinks too. And during one of those sessions, Bill Neal started sketching out a kind of fierce-looking rabbit, and that's what became the logo for the Terlingua Ranch originally, and then in 1967, Carroll decided to slap the logo on a yellow race car, a B production coupe, and that's when the Terlingua Racing Team was born. Well, back in 1966, anyone could send in $3 and become a member of the Terlingua Racing Team. We don't know what they did with the money, but it was the ad. I've got one of the original ads. It's in an old sports car graphic magazine, and it says send it to Carroll, so I guess he got them all. But Bill came to me a few months ago, and he's always had the dream of rekindling the actual team, and once again offering official Terlingua Racing Team memberships. So we took that one step further, and we also are going to offer a line of some collectible merchandise, some t-shirts, some lapel pins. I talked to a lot of y'all today about them. We have our initial offering of some Zippo lighters, things like that, all emblazoned with the Terlingua logo. We have a website, real hard to remember, terlinguaracingteam.com, so take a look at it. But one thing we wanted to do was, we got to checking back in Bill's memory, and he said he knew of at least 3 people who were original members. He remembered, of course, one of them was Carroll, also Rick Kopech, and Howard Pardee, although we couldn't ever figure out if Howard actually ever paid his dues. But we decided to go ahead and offer him a renewal anyway, so if you guys would come up here, I have official Terlingua Racing Team memberships for each one of you.
He's one of the great automotive artists that we all know about. He's been my friend for 50 years. His wife, 75 years old, scrap iron, I call her. Just corrected me yesterday, she's doing fine, and I called Bill today and told him I was glad she's doing fine, and I guess that put an end to those triplets that he wanted to have.
Shipped the car out here on a tractor trailer. I don't know, you paid him $1,200, $1,500, and all of a sudden the car's sitting in the garage without any key. And he had a tough time, but he had a lot of help to get the car. They hot-wired it, got out on the track and lasted 1 lap. And they had to tow him in. And then they had some more guys come over to fix the car, and they finally got it running. But I wanted to do something for Howard so that this might not happen again. And on the way back from the track today, I stopped at a small mom and pop gas station, and I was looking for a keychain for him. And they had this piece of metal with a wooden stick on it that they use for the men's room. So Howard, why don't you come up here and take this and put the key on it? I don't think you'll lose this one. I'd like to ask is if anybody took any digital images or photographs of the convention the last 2 days, or if they intend to take some tomorrow, I would greatly appreciate it if you could send me copies. I could use them when I do the next magazine, which is going to have a write-up of this event. Now, usually I forget to ask this for this donation of all your memories. And last year I remembered to ask, and I think I got about 8,000 digital images that I went through. I'm a glutton for punishment, so if you want to send everything you've got on a CD, feel free to do that. Just send it to club headquarters. Another administrative announcement.
There's a new Cobra. Gorgeous. Hopefully you'll come out and start it up.
But that's what I got called from, so whatever.
Might have had a beer too many. How you doing, sir?
Waiting.
I'm standing back.
It doesn't get much better than that. I got one with big. I need a little.
All right, in a little room here? Sure.
A lot of room.
Oh yeah, everybody watch out. No, it's too dark. When you get this, I'm not. You get in front of it, you should stop.
Hey, it's silent. Must be electric. No. It's got to sound as bad as my Viper V10. He sounds good. For a V10, it sounds great. It does sound good. Look at the rear view mirrors, yeah. There's the back of the rear view mirrors. Light them up! Got it? Got it. That's good he didn't drive it in there. New GT40. Sure is gorgeous.